So today gonna be fixing this crack in this rear bumper. I already prepped it, scuffed it up a little bit with some 80 grit and degreased it, and also opened it up a little bit more. But just go over how I'm gonna do it real quick. It's not gonna be a it's not gonna be a how-to, but just show you guys how I'm doing it. So like I said, I already opened it up a little bit and been watching a bunch of Sprayway to get tips on how to do stuff like this, especially this video, him working on the 88 Camaro. So been watching a bunch of that, but pretty much like I said, I opened up the crack a little bit with the box cutter. So I'm gonna start by repairing it with this fiberglass resin and this fiberglass mat. So I'll cut some of that mat to size, probably do about three layers of the resin in the mat. And then after that dries, I'll go to the other side, sand that down a little bit, and then put the bondo glass on there. I would have kept with the same brand, but I already bought these two before and I couldn't find the Evercoat fiberglass filler. So this is the resin and the hardener. Got my mixing board and some little spreaders. So that's pretty much it. Let's see, I'm just going to mix up some resin now and then cut some fiberglass, cut some of the pieces of fiberglass mat, and then we'll get started on this. And then once that dries, it's going to take a while, so it'll probably be over a couple days. Once that dries, I'm going to come over here, and I already tried with the resin, but it's hanging over a closed door and it cracked. So I'm going to sand all this off, and just in this little spot, since it's not much, just going to fill that with just the fiberglass filler, not worry about the mat and the resin. Same thing with same thing with these holes right here. Just going to do the fiberglass because I was reading up online and it said anything smaller than the size of a dime, so it's okay to just patch it without the fiberglass mat and the resin. So this one's kind of pushing it. Had a buddy suggest trying to get a piece of metal back there and then just welding the metal in. I really don't want to cut more of this out and then find a scrap piece to try to weld that in, so I'm just going to go with the fiberglass route and pack it in there, let it dry, and probably another coat on top of that. But that's the plan. But I'm gonna start with the fiberglass resin repair kit. Once that dries, then I'll move on to the bondo glass, sand that down. Won't be worried about the body filler just yet. I'll probably only use this after I do the epoxy primer, so not too worried about that. I already did the same or similar thing with this fender extension. It had a crack in there, so I went ahead and opened that crack up with the box cutter. Then on the back, might have laid it on there a little thick, but you're not going to see the back side. But I still might sand it down a little bit, smooth it out. But this was just the fiberglass mat and the fiberglass resin, so that's how that'll turn out on the back of the bumper here. So I just have to try to figure out something to keep it in place because it's an awkward shape, so I want to keep everything lined up on the back side of it. So I have some clamps here, so I'll figure something out. But that's enough for that. I'm gonna mix up some of the resin and cut some of the mat up. And I'm not gonna show you guys how to do the fiberglass stuff because there's a bunch of, like I said, videos out there already, especially with Sprayway, and just other channels also. So if you need to know how to fiberglass or anything, there's instructions on the box, there's videos on YouTube. It's just gonna be pretty much a before, not really time lapsing it because it takes 6 hours to dry, and then just fiberglassing it. It's not that hard. Mix it up. I usually dabble on my resin with the paintbrush. So instead of brushing it on, I'll dab the resin on just to get some of the bubbles out. Lay a piece of the fiberglass mat down. And then once that's down, just dab the paintbrush on top of that just to get it in between all the little fibers and everything. And then just repeat that about 3 or 4 times depending on how many layers you want to put. But that's enough of me talking. Let me get to mixing this up, and then I'll cut it back on once I have the fiberglass resin on and everything holding it in place. And then I'll get back to it after it dries and I'm ready to tackle the other side. That's it for now. Alright, so there we have it applied. Now that shade's gonna mess up a little bit, but it's 3 layers of the fiberglass mat on there and the resin. Have it lined up pretty good. Just have it braced up against the headlights, and then that hammer's holding it back a little bit, or a mallet. But that was only a couple minutes. Like I said, I mixed it up, and you want to do it before it all starts gelling up. And you can see that's probably way less than 5 minutes. It starts gelling up, so you don't want to mix up too much. But what I did was put the resin down, and then put 1 layer of the fiberglass mat on there, and these grooves right here. I use this stick that I mixed up the resin with and just push the mat in there so it won't get a whole bunch of resin and air bubbles up underneath it. And then once I got that on there with the resin, I just dab it on there with the paintbrush. You don't want to brush it on because it is still slick. So if you try to brush it on, you're going to move the mat, you're going to move the resin and mess up everything. So just dab it on there. But that's it for that. I'm going to let it sit and dry. It's going to be a little while, but that's it for today probably. Like I said, that needs about 6 hours. So let that dry, and then tomorrow I'll come out and mess with the other side of this with the fiberglass filler. And then, like I said, the spot on the door on that side, and then the 2 spots on the rockers down here, I'll fill those. As far as this crack, I was thinking about just throwing some of that fiberglass resin in there, but I think I'm just gonna super glue it. So just go out and get some super glue or Gorilla Glue or something that's waterproof once it's dry, and just glue it on there, put a clamp on it, and let it dry. But other than that, I think that's all the fiberglass work I'll need. There might be a little piece on the airbox right here. I might weld it, I'm not sure, once I clean this up, how well it's going to be. So, see, there's a tab on this side. That's broke off on the other side, so I think I might just get a washer and either tack it on there or fiberglass it on there. I'm not sure yet, but eventually I'll clean this up and paint it. Along with this, clean it up, paint it, and call it a day. Getting back home. Took the little pup on the walk. Kino, come. The little puppy on the walk. Well, probably had to do some more fiberglass work, but got that all patched up. It's all solid. Hopefully you didn't just crack this even more. Looks pretty good. But yeah, that's nice and solid. Tomorrow I'll work on putting the fiberglass filler in the crack on the other side. Was able to keep everything pretty much lined up, so we're good there. But time to get the pup back inside and call it a night. Getting ready to start the fiberglass or the bondo glass process, but decided to clean it up first. Got all this chip and paint or whatever it is, plastic. I think it was like that chrome tape or whatever, and they just painted over it. So I have to get all this off, sand this one down. Took off these little filler pieces here and here. I'll sand those down too, but for the most part just use the sander with 80 grit and knocked off all the big chips, and then where it was starting to peel between the paints and stuff, just try to get all that feathered out for the most part. Like here, I'll have to sand all this down, so it'll just start chipping. So sand it down till it's feathered out. Try not to work it too much because it is plastic, so don't want to go too thin in areas, but for the most part just getting this off, and then I'll work on the bondo glass. But yeah, so just 80 grit sandpaper, get the chips off, and then feather everything else out. There are a few repairs I might have to do, I believe right in here. So I sand this down, put a little bit of fiberglass filler on that, and like these corners a little bit. But I don't want to do body filler just yet until epoxy primer it, and then I'll do all the body filler on top of the epoxy. But as far as the fiberglass, I'll do it directly on the plastic. So these areas I'm not too concerned about. Well, I have to sand that a little bit more, but just think these will be done once it's primered. Yeah, won't even worry about them. Just this one, and probably clean up some of these cracks also. And then just fill this one. There's one piece right here that I think is a little snapped off, or it broke, so it's probably when the dog jumped on it. But eventually I'll go back and probably put a little fiberglass resin on there just to toughen it up. But that's it. Next time I got the camera on, probably be a time lapse of me just filling up the fiberglass. So that's it. Alright, so there it goes with the fiberglass on there. I might go back in and add a little bit right in here just to smooth that out, and might just add a little bit more here so I could actually shape it. But I didn't realize how fast it dried. It's pretty quick. Not sure, it's about 90 in the garage right now, and the sun was beaming on that mixing board I had also, so I don't know if that had a little bit to do with helping it dry a little bit faster. Still a little tacky there, but yeah, still a little tacky. But I think it said about 10 minutes dry time before you start sanding it. So I'm not sure if I want to add some more there or not. I might just leave it. But I did also add a little bit on that hole right there. So this one I'll definitely go back through with just a little light layer, scuff it up, and a little light layer just to be able to shape that too. But what I did, like I said, I probably mixed up too much at once to try to work with it, and it dried pretty quick. But in here, I'll end up sanding this down, and then eventually hit this with a flat disc a little bit. A couple more passes with a flat disc, get it a little smoother, and then run a seam of fiberglass filler just along this side. It'll cover, or it'll fill in this hole right here, fill in back here, but just to get this nice and smooth, I'll run a beam or run a seam of fiberglass filler in there. But for the most part, the bumper is pretty much done. Like I said, just have to shape this a little bit, sand this down, clean up in here, and after I do that, it's pretty much done. The door, I said, have one more little layer, fiberglass filler on that. That should be done. And then this rocker, and that should be done. And really, I believe that's all the body work I need to do. Yeah, I think that's all the body work. Oh, and those little, let me see if I can find the fender. Just where they have these emblems for the Monte Carlo logo. I'll probably go in on the back side and put some fiberglass resin in there, and then fill the holes with fiberglass. But other than that, still need to get the super glue for this taillight bezel, so I'll just glue that together, sand it down, and then I think just a little bit of filler in there, just a little bit, and that should be it. But there's no need to show the rest of the little fiberglass process. Just add a little bit of layer, or add a little layer fiberglass to those certain areas. If you need to know how to use the fiberglass, I'm sure there's videos out there, but I just use bondo glass. I try to find the Evercoat brand, but everybody was sold out of it. Went to about 5-6 different stores, so I use the Evercoat fiberglass resin. So I usually use bondo. Just think this was, the Evercoat was in stock, or the first store I stopped by had it, so I picked that up. And then I should have just went with the bondo. Use all the same brand, but I don't think it'll make a big difference because I'm not putting a different brand on top of the bondo or the fiberglass filler. I'll epoxy coat over all that. I gotta check to see if I can use the same thing for the metal like I could use for the plastic bumpers, because I know some stuff isn't as flexible as others, so I have to look into doing that. And then I'll epoxy primer it, and then that's when I'll sand it, find the low spots if it needs some body filler, certain areas, and I'll fill on top of the epoxy instead of directly on the metal. Then after the epoxy, I'll probably just find a sealer or 2K primer, spray that on top, block that down, and then eventually paint. But that's it for today.